Coming up on this Thursday edition of Daybreak, a typhoon warning for Korea's southern Jeju Island has been lifted as Neoguri, now weakened to a tropical storm, moves towards Japan's southernmost main island of Kyushu. President Park Geun-hye will meet with the floor leaders of the ruling and opposition parties at the presidential office Thursday to urge them to pass pending bills and settle unresolved issues. Plus, Israel steps up airstrikes, leaving at least 47 people reportedly dead and many more injured in Gaza as Hamas fires rockets deep into Israel. Daybreak begins now. Hello, and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Thursday, July 10th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom, and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, the typhoon warning on Korea's southernmost resort island of Jeju has been lifted as Typhoon Neoguri makes its way north towards Japan. Neoguri is expected to make landfall on Kyushu this Thursday morning, but residents on Jeju will see strong winds and some more rain for the next few hours at least. Waves of up to 8 meters high are expected along Korea's southern and southeastern coasts, as you could see there. And Neoguri has now weakened to a tropical storm, but officials in Japan say it could still bring heavy rain and violent winds to eastern Japan, including Tokyo, by Friday. Kyushu has already seen record amounts of rain over the past week, and warnings for floods, strong winds and landslides are already in effect. President Park Geun-hye will sit down with the floor leaders and chief policymakers of Korea's two main political parties on this Thursday at the presidential office of Cheongwadae. Topping the agenda will be pending parliamentary issues, including proposed bills on measures designed to address the safety shortcomings that were exposed in April's ferry disaster and anti-lobbying legislation. The president is also expected to lean on Parliament to pass bills aimed at boosting economic growth. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, is widely expected to use the opportunity to criticize the presidential office for its recent cabinet nominee choices. And Thursday's meeting will be the first, in fact, between President Park and the leaders of both main political parties since she took office more than 1 year ago. And at Korea's National Assembly is where lawmakers gave 3 of President Park's cabinet nominees the green light on Wednesday to assume their new roles. Those given the nod were Lee Byung-gi for National Intelligence Service Chief, Lee Ki-kwon for Minister of Employment and Labour, and Kim Hee-jung for Minister of Gender Equality and Family. The president tapped 8 nominees for various cabinet positions last month. All but 1 have gone through their hearings and are now awaiting confirmation. Culture Minister designate Jung Sung-gun, currently the CEO of Arirang TV, will appear before lawmakers this Thursday. Now, President Park Geun-hye is urging the international legal community to take more of an interest in North Korea's human rights situation. Speaking at a luncheon with international judges and scholars at the presidential office of Cheongwadae on Wednesday, President Park said their efforts to ensure the human rights of North Koreans are not infringed upon would ultimately contribute to the peace and unification of the Korean Peninsula. The judges and scholars are in town for an international law symposium. Among the attendees were Song Sang-hyun, president of the International Criminal Court, and Judge Kwon Oh-gon of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. Now, there's some high-level talks going on in China right now, and the United States and China have expressed their determination to avoid conflict and maintain peace, but they have, thus far at least, failed to resolve their differences over maritime security and cyber espionage. These high-level annual talks between the two governments will continue in Beijing on this Thursday. Park Ji-won reports.
The world's two biggest economies launched 2 days of annual talks in Beijing Wednesday, with Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasizing the importance of bilateral cooperation.
Sino-U.S. cooperation can be a significant achievement that is beneficial to both sides and to the world. A confrontation between the two countries will be a disaster. We should mutually respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity and respect each other's development paths.
The U.S. is being represented by Secretary of State John Kerry and Treasury Secretary Jacob Lew, and China by State Councilor Yang Zhichu and Vice Premier Wang Yang. Kerry stressed that the U.S. does not wish to contain China and welcome the emergence of a peaceful China.
And despite our differences, our two nations have the ability to find the common ground. That's the foundation on which we need to build decades of prosperity for the future, and also build the possibilities of stability and peace at the same time.
A number of issues are on the table for discussion, including a bilateral investment treaty and China's currency valuation. They are also expected to exchange views on more sensitive issues, like the territorial disputes in the South China Sea and East China Sea that have gripped the region, China's alleged hacking attacks on U.S. companies, and the North Korean nuclear issue. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
South Korea's top diplomat has stressed that Japan must be transparent with the direction of its defense policy to reassure its neighbors. Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se was speaking with visiting New Zealand Foreign Minister Murray McCully Wednesday afternoon, where he said Japan's recent military build-up concerns Korea. In response, McCully said New Zealand Prime Minister John Key also stressed the importance of Tokyo's transparency while it is in the process of shifting its defense policy when he met Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe earlier this week.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, in some economic news, the Korean government is stepping up efforts to diversify its oil import channels, as the nation is still extremely heavily dependent on crude oil from the Middle East. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said on Wednesday that it has revised an oil bill so that companies that import oil from non-Middle Eastern countries can benefit more. Under the revised bill, companies will be compensated with the extra cost of importing non-Middle East oil like London's Brent crude or African crude oil. Currently, 85% of Korea's crude oil imports come from the politically sensitive and rather unstable area of the Middle East. Now, after Samsung Electronics, Korea's biggest tech giant, posted far from impressive earnings for the second quarter earlier this week, it's now pushing to find the next big thing to get it back on track. But analysts aren't really holding much of their breath that this will come by the third quarter anyway. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
The future of Samsung Electronics lies in the balance, and that was never more true than now. One after another, securities firms are lowering their projections for Samsung's third quarter after the company reported lower than expected earnings for the previous quarter. At least 26 securities firms in Seoul already say the smartphone maker will record an average of $8.5 billion in operating profit in the third quarter, which is a drop of more than 15% from last year's projections for the same period.
Samsung's slowdown in the second quarter is widely seen as a result of a slowdown brought on by a saturated market of high-end smartphones.
In response, Samsung is eyeing its next growth engine. One of these is the Internet of Things, where various smart devices are connected through the Internet using sensors on gadgets. As a manufacturer of electronic devices, Samsung does have a strength in this field. The company launched its smart home in April, which connects smart sensors in home appliances. The service makes home automation easy with a single app that connects and controls many home appliances, from TVs and mobile devices to internet-connected burglar alarms and light switches. Samsung is also working to promote its health and fitness gadgets. The Samsung Strategy and Innovation Center in Silicon Valley in the United States presented a service in May called Sami, a cloud platform that saves and analyzes collected data from the company's wearable devices, the Samsung Gear and the Gear Fit. Kim Jeong, Arirang News.
Now, Samsung Electronics isn't the only Korean firm hurting when it comes to disappointing second quarter operating profits. The nation's top 20 conglomerates are also feeling the heat, with a collective fall in operating profits of roughly 7%. Kim Min-ji reports.
Korea's top 20 conglomerates by market capitalization are expected to turn in disappointing scorecards for the second quarter. According to market researcher F&G Guide, the combined operating profit of the top 20 companies is expected to amount to about 18 trillion won, or roughly $17.8 billion, which is down 7.1% from last year. Their combined sales are also expected to fall about 1% to sit at just over $200 billion. The slip has come on the back of a stronger won, which has hit export-reliant firms the hardest. Automobile companies' profits will also be affected. The operating profit for Hyundai Motor, the second largest, is expected to come to roughly $2.3 billion, down 6.7% from last year. During the same period, Kia Motors is also likely to see a drop of almost 21%. The automobile industry says that sales will be similar to last year, driven by the sales of new cars, but operating profits will dip due to the stronger won and marketing expenses related to the Brazil World Cup. POSCO, LG Display, and Hyundai Heavy Industries are also expected to see a decline. On the flip side, firms in the financial and IT sectors will likely turn in strong report cards, with firms centered around domestic consumption set to benefit from the strong won. Samsung C&T is expected to see a jump of about 59%, Naver 32%, and LG Electronics 10.3%. LG's mobile communications division is also likely to turn a profit in the second quarter on strong sales of its new G3 smartphone, and that's expected to have a positive effect on the performance cards of affiliates that supply parts to LG and tech giant Samsung Electronics. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, the number of foreign residents here in Korea has been climbing by the year, and it's at the point now where roughly 3 out of every 100 people living in Korea today are foreign nationals. But how is their quality of life compared to native Koreans? Yulian went out to the biggest multi-ethnic city, which is near Seoul, to find out.
This district, which sits at the heart of the industrial city of Ansan, is known as a borderless village. Take one glimpse down the street, and the signs in different languages give no indication that you're in Korea.
Southeast Asian workers began arriving in the mid-1990s to seek their fortunes in local factories, giving birth to this bustling multicultural village.
The city promotes itself as foreigner-friendly. But area residents say that's not necessarily the whole story.
So many people and merchants crowd the streets on the weekends that it takes 10 times longer to get anywhere. The city made the streets pretty, but there's nothing being done to take care of them.
Jung says the government, which designated Ansan as a multi-ethnic city, has now turned its back on the migrant population and refuses to face the reality of their living situation. To make matters worse, the local community service center says that foreigners are leaving trash bags in the streets, prompting loads of odor complaints.
The lack of government support has raised the concern that the area could eventually turn into a slum and become a place that the local Koreans avoid entirely.
With the continued inflow of foreign residents, 2/3 of the over 16,000 residents here are now non-Korean. The people that helped build this city deserve better support. Yurian, Arirang News.
Now, love it or hate it, Korean singer Psy's new song Hangover was the most viewed Korean music video on YouTube in the first half of this year. According to the video sharing website on Wednesday, Psy's tune, in which he teams up with the legendary American rapper Snoop Dogg, was the most viewed music video in the K-pop genre. The video has racked up roughly 95 million views since its release on June 9th. The run-up to Psy's Hangover was Girls' Generation's Mr. Mr., followed by EXO's Overdose. Psy's Gangnam-style music video, released almost 2 years ago now, has over 2 billion views on YouTube. Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Thursday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Mark. More and frequent airstrikes befell the grounds of Gaza Strip as the second day of Israel's offensive killed at least 22 people and struck 200 Hamas targets. Palestinian militants continue to shoot rockets deep into Israeli territory, deeper north than ever before. No Israeli casualties have been reported. The Israeli intelligence minister warned a ground operation could be imminent to, quote, temporarily cut off the strengthening of this terror army. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his army was ready for all possibilities, again reiterating that Hamas will pay a heavy price for firing toward Israeli citizens. Earlier, Western-backed President Mahmoud Abbas from Palestine had appealed to the UN Security Council and other global entities to guarantee the safety of what he called the unarmed Palestinian people. In a televised speech carried on Palestinian TV, he said what's happening was not a war between two armies and accused Israel of rejecting a proposed truce, adding that Palestinian factions in Gaza wanted to reach calm. In Iraq, bodies of 53 men were found in a mostly Shia town, raising ethnic and sectarian tensions in the ongoing battle for control of the historic state. The men were discovered in a field south of Baghdad, bound, blindfolded, and ridden with bullets. An investigation is underway to determine who they were and why they might have been killed. Meanwhile, in a fiery televised address, Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki accused the Kurdish minority of safeguarding the ISIL militants, wreaking havoc in its quest to establish an Islamic State. He didn't offer evidence, though, behind his claim that Kurdish-controlled Erbil province was becoming a rebel haven, further driving the wedge across ethnic lines despite pressure from the West to bridge the divisions to hold Iraq together. Protests, robbery, and vandalism in Brazil as anger boiled over its national team's humiliating World Cup defeat. The Brazilian team lost 1-7 to Germany in Wednesday's game in Fortaleza. In reaction, demonstrators torched buses in neighborhoods outside of Sao Paulo and in an area usually packed by revelers. Disappointed fans burned a Brazilian flag. Police were on high alert and apprehended perpetrators, though there was no widespread rioting as was feared by some. Both candidates have claimed victory in Indonesia's tight presidential election Wednesday, as quick counts by pollsters reported contradicting results. Jakarta Governor Joko Widodo claimed victory shortly after the polls were closed, followed by his opponent, former Army General Prabowo Subianto, about an hour later, saying he received the support and mandate from the people of Indonesia. The country's oldest think tank, CSIS, put Widodo in the lead with with 52% to Subianto's 48%, but others had Subianto leading by 1 to 2 percentage points. Incumbent President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono is urging calm until the official tally is announced on July 22nd.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the semifinal matchup between Argentina and the Netherlands, which kicked off earlier this morning. Of course, the winner headed to the final against Germany, so let's take a look at the highlights. Of course, no one expecting a 7-1 match in this one as both sides go neck and neck throughout the first half, with Argentina looking a bit more aggressive on the offense. Now, despite several scoring opportunities for both nations, they're tied 0-0 going into the second half, and even in the second half, still a 0-0 draw. And now moving over to the LPGA this time, as South Korea's Park In-bi, despite losing her #1 ranking earlier this year, hopes to achieve a career Grand Slam after this weekend. Now, the third-ranked Park In-bi, who has previously won the Kraft Nabisco Championship, the LPGA Championship, and the U.S. Women's Open, just needs the British Women's Open title to achieve the career Grand Slam, which would be a first for an Asian golfer. Although she has been struggling this season, experts believe that if she can fix her putting, she has a chance over this weekend. And now moving over to Wednesday night's KBO action, the SK Wyverns cruised past the Kia Tigers 9-3, with the LG Twins winning at the bottom of the 10th inning 3-2 over the Tucson Bears, and the Nexen Heroes crushed the Hanwha Eagles once again 13-1. So with that said, let's take a look at the Samsung Lions take on the Lotte Giants. And of course, going into the game here, first inning, Hwang Jae-gyun singles to left, Sonasop scores, and it's 1-0 Lotte. But Yamiako Navarro leading off the bottom of the inning, and there it goes to deep right center, gone, and we're tied 1-1. Now we go over to the bottom of the second inning, man on third, Park Han-hee with a clutch RBI single, giving the Samsung Lions a 2-1 lead. But with Samsung up 5-1 in the ninth inning, Lotte starts rallying, starting off with Park Jong-yoon with a 2-run shot to deep right field, and it's now 5-3. But next play, Lee Seung-hwa with an RBI single to right field, and all of a sudden it's 5-4. But Im Chang-yong able to get out of the jam here as he gets the save, as Samsung holds on to win this one 5-4. And now finishing things off with some midweek K-League Classic action, we had Pohang and Seoul play a scoreless draw, with Incheon and Seongnam drawing 1-1, and Jeonbuk and Jeju drew 1-1 as well. Now in other matches, Cheonnam beat Gyeongnam 3-1, and Sangju defeated Busan 2-0. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Suwon Samsung Blue Wings take on the Ulsan Hyundai Tigers. Of course, going into the match here, Suwon looking quite aggressive from the start as they go aggressive as Roger Rodriguez da Silva scores the first goal of the match, giving Suwon the 1-0 lead. But shortly after that, in the 25th minute, Santos make that 2-0 Suwon. Now Suwon up 2-0 going into the second half of the match. Lee Jae-won finding the back of the net for Ulsan, making it 2-1, but Kim Eun-sun helps Suwon run away with the lead as he sends one past the goalkeeper here for a 3-1 lead. Now, of course, Ko Chang-hyun does score on a penalty in the 68th minute, but Suwon does hold on to win it 3-2, your final score. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, the Typhoon Neoguri is traveling to Kagoshima area in Kyushu, Japan this morning, and the Korean peninsula shouldn't be affected by the typhoon. Also, typhoon watches have been lifted in Jeju Island, but parts of the regions in Korea will have to deal with this scorching heat today. In fact, heat wave advisory have been issued in most inland regions, including here in Seoul. Temperatures will be hovering over 30 degrees Celsius coexist across the region under mostly to partly sunny skies. So please take good care of your health not to get too tired from those heat. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low here in Seoul is starting out at 25, but the high will rise to 33, and Daegu and Gwangju will see a high of 32 and 31, while Busan will top out at 28. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju and Daejeon will see a high of 27 and 33. Dokdo will peak to 26, while Mount Kumgang hike up to 24. Well, as we can see from these numbers, it's going to be a very hot day, so please stay cool. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up in 30 minutes' time, and we're here throughout the day with more news bulletins. Goodbye for now.